Okay, so today's video lesson is on slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is one of like the most important concepts that you're going to learn in my class this year, especially with our weird schedule in general this year. We're only teaching probably like half of what we normally teach, but it's the most important half. And slope-intercept form is like top of the list for what you need to know. So we're kind of doing an introduction to it today. But soon you'll know how to write slope-intercept form, graph slope-intercept form, everything with slope-intercept form. Now, if this sounds crazy, I get it, but I'm guessing that most of you probably might recognize this next piece. What slope-intercept form is, it's just a format on how to write a linear equation. So an equation that's going to be a straight line on a graph. There are different ways to write linear equations, but slope-intercept form is our absolute favorite. Okay, it's the one you're going to see the most in your math classes. So here's what slope-intercept form looks like. Looks like y equals. Okay, so we have our y value and it is set equal to some stuff. Okay, mx, the m and the x are right next to each other. So that means that they're multiplying n times x plus b. Whoa, that's 4 variables. That's 4 letters. Well, the x and the y, that's just standard in a linear equation because that's what a linear equation is. It's a relationship between x and y coordinates on a graph. So the x and the y just come from x and y on a graph. But m and b are actually very important variables. So let's test it out. What does m represent? We've been doing that. N is your slope. So I want you to maybe circle that or highlight it, whatever you want to do to tell yourself that the m is your slope. So that's like your rise and your run. Okay. And then this b value, that's new. We haven't talked about that at all in my class this year. The b value is your y-intercept. So write that down, please, and let's talk about what that means. So m is slope. We've been talking about slope for a long time, how to find slope from a table, from a graph, from 2 points, right? That's how steep the line is. It's going to tell you the rise and the run. The y-intercept, what? What the heck is that? Okay, well, I printed a little graph for you here, okay? This is your x-axis. This is your y-axis. So the word intercept, like if you intercept a football, right? Like it means you crossed over somebody's path and you got it, right? So that's how I think of intercept in math. It's where it intercepts the y-axis, where it crosses the y-axis. So if you had a line like this, look where this ruler is intercepting the y-axis. It's crossing it really close to +4. So y-intercept in this case would be +4. If you had a line like this, where is it crossing the y-axis? Where does it cross the y-axis? Here's the y-axis. Where does it cross? At -8. So your y-intercept would be -8. So that's what it means. Y-intercept is just where it crosses the y-axis. So let's go ahead and write that off to the side. Where the line crosses the y-axis. So intercept kind of just means cross. Where does it hit the y-axis? Okay, so let's get some practice with just what this form is and all the little parts and pieces, okay? So our first little section here is going to be identify slope and y-intercept. So those are in the instructions. Yes, write them down so you know what you're doing later on when you look at your notes. Okay, so I'm going to give you some equations. We're just going to do two in this little section. I'm going to give you a linear equation, and you're going to identify the slope and identify the y-intercept. So here's number one. Y equals 3x plus 5. It's a very typical linear equation. Is it in slope-intercept form? Well, let's check. We got a y value equal to some number attached to x plus some number. Yeah, it's in slope-intercept form. Okay, and the reason why this is called slope-intercept form is because it gives you the slope and it gives you the y-intercept. That's why it's called slope-intercept form. So all I'm wanting you to do here is I want you to tell me what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. So identify your m value and your b value. So the m value, if we look at our formula up here, the m value, the slope, is the number attached to x. So what number is attached to x here? 3. Okay, and for your b value is at the back here. So for your b value, it's positive 5. Okay. Now, as an ordered pair, though, something we should mention, as an ordered pair, this would be 0, 5, because the y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, would be 0, 5. So it'd be up here. Okay. All right. Number two, here's your equation. Y equals negative x plus 4. Identify your slope and your y-intercept. Figure out your slope, figure out your y-intercept. Okay, so for slope, we're looking for the number attached to x. I just see a negative. So what secret number is there? A 1, but it's a negative 1. So your slope is negative 1. For your b value, that's at the back here, your b value is positive 4. So the b value is 4. Now let's write that as a location. If your y-intercept is 4, that location would be 0, 4. Okay. Now, number 3 right here is going to be an entry task question. Entry task question right there. So here's your equation. Y equals 1/3 x minus 4. Y equals 1/3 x minus 4. Okay, so on your entry task, I'm going to simply ask you what the m value is and what the b value is of that equation. Now I'm going to tell you, be careful. That's not a positive 4. That's a negative 4. Okay. Okay, so now, next little part of notes, write equations write equations, in slope-intercept form. I'm abbreviating that, slope-intercept form. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the slope, give you the y-intercept, and you're going to make it all nice and pretty and put it into slope-intercept form. So here's number 4. Number 4, I'm going to tell you that the m value is negative 1/2, and the b value is 5. Okay, so m is negative 1/2, b value is 5, and what you are going to do is you are going to take this information and write the equation in slope-intercept form. So it's actually pretty dang easy. So we always start with y equals. Y equals. Okay. Next, we're going to plug in our m value. So the given m value was -0.5. And that -0.5 is right next to your x value. So you simply just attach that x on there. And now this b value is +5. So I would put that at the end, right? Because that's where our b value goes. +5. Final answer, y equals -1/2 x plus 5. Okay. All right. Next up, number 5. I'll do this one with you. Okay, I'm going to tell you that the y-intercept is -10, and the slope equals 4. Okay. So taking that information, I told you 2 parts to it. Told you the y-intercept, I told you the slope. All I'm wanting you to do is take that and write it in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is always y equals something x plus b. What do we put right here in front of x? We put the slope, or the m value. In this case, our slope is right here. So our slope was +4. So y equals 4x, and then we probably have something at the back. What's the y-intercept? Y-intercept is -10. Now in slope-intercept form, it says plus b. So it's tempting to want to put plus -10. But hopefully you know by now, we don't really want a plus negative. So we just write it as -10. Final answer, y equals 4x minus 10. Okay. Number 6. Number 6 is going to be an entry test question. I'm going to give you the m and b value, and you're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So your slope is 2/5, and your b value is -8. So you're simply just going to write that equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, last part of notes, this is like most important part. Last part of notes is to tell you how to graph y equals mx plus b. So graphing slope-intercept form. Okay. So this does take practice, and your practice is mainly going to be on Delta Math, because I don't want you to have to draw graphs over and over again. Usually I would print you things like this, guys, so you could attach it in your notebook. But so we are going to do 1, maybe 2 examples in here written out nicely. So let me give you instructions. Okay, so we're going to write directions on how to graph slope-intercept form. So here you go. Use the y-intercept. Okay, and what letter represents the y-intercept? M or B? It's the B value, so maybe put that here. Use the y-intercept to plot the first point. And these are steps, so if you want to make it like a step 1, step 2, I think that's a good idea. So use the y-intercept to plot the first point. Okay. Step 2 is then use the slope. Then use the slope. And what letter represents slope? M. Then use the slope to find additional points. Okay. So in the graph that we're going to do, draw a graph like over up to the right. I'm hoping you can go three or more in each direction. Okay, so get that set up. Pause if you need to. Okay, so we have a blank graph here. Now this is the equation that I'm gonna have you graph. Ready? Here's your given equation. Y equals negative 2x plus 3. Y equals negative 2x plus 3. So we're gonna do this like really well because it's your maybe only your only example in your notebook. There are some things that I want you to identify here. Obviously, we need to identify our slope and identify our y-intercept, right? So let's do that first. Your m value is whatever's attached to the x. So your slope is negative 2. Okay. B value, what's your b value? Positive 3. Okay, cool. Now, let's go ahead and follow these instructions. It says use a y-intercept, so the b value, to plot the first point. So your b value is 3. So where does that go? Does it go 3 on the x-axis or 3 on the y-axis? Well, it's your y-intercept, so that needs to go to 3 on the y-axis. So that would be right here, okay? Something I want you to tell yourself is the location would be 0, 3, not 3, 0. That'd be over here. Okay, it's not an x-intercept, it's a y-intercept. So we go to positive 3 on the y-axis. Now, the slope is going to tell you how to move, but this is where you have to actually do a little bit more thinking. So the slope is your rise and your run. That's what slope is. Rise over run. But this isn't a fraction. So how does that work? 2 is something, right? Well, whatever this is, I'm going to put it for my rise. Now I have to think of what number can I divide negative 2 by and have it end up as negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 1 is negative 2. So anything divided by 1 is itself. So if you run into this case where your slope is a positive, like a, not positive, excuse me, if your slope is a whole number, then when you're thinking about how to move with it, put it over 1. So negative 2 is the same thing as negative 2 over 1. The reason why this is better is because the rise and the run are going to tell you how to move. So if your rise is negative 2, you're going to go down 2. So from this point that we just plotted, we're going to go down 2. So I'm hovering right there. The 1, the fact that it's a positive 1, is going to tell you go to the right 1. So from this intercept, so we put our intercept on there, y-intercept. Now I'm going to use the slope to move. I'm going to go down 2, right 1. Boom. There's my next point. Connect those 2 points, put arrows at the ends, and you just graphed in slope-intercept form. Okay. So if you want to write a little summary of how we moved, I'd say plot point at 0, 3, then move down 2, right 1. Okay, so that's kind of your summary for how to graph this. Now, I am going to show you on Delta Math how to plot some things, but I think it's good for us to do kind of an explanation like this. So this we're going to call explain how to graph. Okay, so it's a sentence just like this. So let's say we're going to call this, is it number 7? Okay, so if your equation was y equals 2/5 x minus 1. y equals 2/5 x minus 1. We're going to explain how to graph. So we're going to start with our y-intercept. That's your starting point. You're going to plot point at something. So I'm going to start by doing that. Plot point at, okay, now you got to locate your y-intercept. What's your y-intercept here? It's -1. But location-wise, that would be 0, -1. So if this was our graph, and I know you don't have a graph, just watch though, we plot a point at -1. Okay. Okay. Then move, and you're either going to say up or down next. So 2/5 is your slope. 2 is your rise. Since it's +2, that'd be going up 2. Okay, so then move up 2. And then the 5 is going to tell you to go left or right, or the denominator to tell you to go left or right. Since it's +5, you're going to go right. 5. Right. 5. Okay. So we plot point at 0, -1. That's your y-intercept. And then we use the slope to know how to find our next point. The first number, the number on top, tells you to go up or down a certain amount. Number on the bottom tells you to go to left or right. So from this intercept, I'm going to go up 2. 1, 2, right 5. So that is the equation y equals 2/5 x minus 1. Okay. Okay, so your last entry task question will be this. You're going to explain how to move, and you're practicing, right? Explain how to graph using kind of similar language as this. Explain how to graph this for me. Y equals 4/3 x minus 6. Okay, so that's your last entry task question. Now, last part of this video is going to be me doing some delta math with you. I highly recommend you watch it so that you know what you're doing later. Okay, no need to write it in your notebook. You're looking and you're watching and you're absorbing information. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have delta math pulled up here, which is exactly the assignment that you're going to be doing. Different equations, but same sort of thing. So it's asking you to graph the line with the equation y equals -1/3 x plus 2. So to start, I'm going to kind of show you like how to kind of think about this, how to break it apart. So y equals mx plus b. The m value is our slope. The b value is the y-intercept. So I'm just going to simply change this equation to what it says on screen. So it looks like the number in front of our x value, so right here, the number attached to your x value is -1/3. So I'm going to type that in right there. Okay, and the b value is a +2. So what that tells me is it tells me that the slope is equal to -1/3. Oops. Okay, because that's the number attached to the x value. So that means I'm going to be going down 1 because it's a -1 and right 3. So that's how this graph is moving. Down 1, right 3. But then it also tells me what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept in this case is +2. Okay, so we see that at the back here. +2 is your y-intercept. Now, the location of that though would be 0, 2. Okay. The y-intercept is super important because that's actually our starting point. So that's the first point you're going to plot in here. So if my y-intercept is +2, I put a point right there. Notice we're on the y-axis and it's at +2 on the y-axis, 0, 2. Now we figure out where our next point is going. So the slope tells us how to move. When we wrote it down over here, down 1, right 3. So since it's -1/3, that'd be down 1, right 3. Okay, down 1, right 3, down 1, right 3. You just need 2 points on there. So our intercept's at +2, and the slope tells you how to move. Down 1, right 3. So then we hit submit. Yes. Check mark. Cool. Okay. So, new problem. Y equals 5x minus 2. So I'm going to do this one more time just in case this is helpful. So the m value there was 5. And the b value, be careful on this, it's not +2, it's -2. So that tells me that my slope, oops, don't know where that went to a new page. My slope is 5, +5. Now, for rise and run though, what that means is it's going up 5, because that's a +5, and then it's going right 1, because 5 over 1, so let's show you like this, 5 over 1 is the same thing as 5. 5 divided by 1 is the same thing as 5, so you're going to go up 5 over 1. But before we do that movement, we have to have a starting point, which is your y-intercept. So your y-intercept on this one, if you look at the back of the equation, you have a -2 at the back of the equation. So your y-intercept is at -2, so that'd be 0, -2. So that's how we start. Okay, our starting point is this b value back here, which is -2 on the y-intercept. And then our slope tells us how to move. So it's saying it's +5, so it's going up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over 1. Up 5, over 1. It continues that pattern. Okay. Okay, now I'm just going to do a couple without taking these notes off to the side because I'm hoping you kind of get the hang of it. Okay, so my starting point, I always look to the back here. Starting point is your b value, your y-intercept. So your b value is -3. So I'm going to start at -3 on the y-axis. And then I look at my slope here, guys, -1/5. So I know it should be descending. So I'm going to stick the negative with the 1. So that'd be me going down 1. Okay, and then 5, I go right 5. Down 1, right 5. Yes, that's a negative slope, so that makes sense. Okay, and we'll do this last one with you guys. Okay, so starting point. Look at your b value in the back here. It's a +2. That means you're going to start at 0, 2. +2 on the y-axis. From that starting point, now we're going to use slope to tell you your next point. Slope is -6, so that's I always do my vertical change first, right? So since it's negative, I'm going to go down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going down 6. Now, I have to go over something, right? I'm going to go over 1, and that's because -6 divided by +1 is still just -6. So your rise was -6, your run was 1. So down 6 over 1. And then let's hit submit. Okay, and if you're getting these wrong, I would make sure you're looking at this explanation on Delta Math because it's actually pretty dang good. Okay, there's also help videos. If you don't want to listen to me, you can watch Delta Math's help video and get help there. Okay, that's how you graph equations. Enjoy.